Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we are going to discuss about Anti Maritime Piracy Bill, which was first of all formulated in 2019. However, for the first time the government has decided to take this bill into the parliament. So in this particular video we are going to discuss about the status, the need and the significance of this particular bill. So first of all, why this issue is in news? So as discussed, the Anti Maritime Piracy Bill 2019 has been listed for the consideration and passing during the monsoon session of parliament, which had just began in the last week. And if passed, this bill will basically bring the UNCLOS, that is the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, and it will convert into a domestic law. It will bring the UNCLOS into a domestic law, and thus it can then enable Indian authorities to take action against piracy on the high seas region. High seas region, we will discuss what is the high seas regions and different maritime zones of India. If we talk about the background of this bill, so the first time it was introduced in 9th of December 2019, and the Standing Committee of External Affairs presented the report on this particular bill on the 11th February 2021, and after that, as of now, this bill has been taken for consideration, and maybe in the same monsoon session it may be passed. Now, what is the present status before this bill can become law? How the Indian enforcement agencies tackle the piracy issues? So first of all, if we talk about the high seas region, in this region there is no domestic legislation which can deal with the matters of piracy. If we talk about the areas that is within the sovereign territory of India, so in that case, if we talk about the prosecution, it is done under the IPC 1860, Indian Penal Code 1860, under those same provisions which deals with the cases such as armed robbery, and the admiralty jurisdiction of the specific code applies in the maritime cases. But the problem is that if we talk about the this sovereign territory of India, it is very limited in nature. For example, if this is the land territory of India, then the sovereign territory of India extend only up to 12 nautical mile from this coastline. So only if the piracy is happening in this 12 nautical mile, then the IPC will be applied. If the piracy is happening beyond this territory, then the IPC cannot be applied, and that is why many acts of piracy that is committed by foreigner outside India's territorial water, that is outside the 12 nautical mile demarcation zone, cannot be an offense under the IPC, and that is why Indian authorities cannot take any stringent action against the piracy. So what are the important features of the bill that can help Indian authorities in tackling piracy cases? So first of all, the piracy has been clearly defined by the bill, and as per this bill, piracy is defined as an act of violence or detention by the crew or passengers of any private vessel or private aircraft on the high seas region. Not only that, bill also says that if the act of violence is directed against another vessel or aircraft and or people or property on board, then that also can be classified as a piracy activities. If we talk about the application of this bill, so this bill will be applied to the sea region, that is the high seas region, that is beyond the exclusive economic zone of India. Now let us try to understand all these terminologies in more detail, that what is the territorial water, what is the exclusive economic zone, and what is the high seas where the bill will be applicable. So maritime zone of any country is demarcated from its coastline. So for example, if you look at, suppose this land is the Indian coastline, Indian landmass, so this is the coastline. So from coastline, if you go up to a distance of 12 nautical mile, 1 nautical mile is equal to roughly 1.88 kilometers. So 12 nautical mile will be roughly about 22.2 kilometers. So from coastline up to distance of 22.2 kilometers is the territorial waters of India, and it is in this water that the Indian Penal Code is applied. However, all the piracy activities that is happening beyond this 12 nautical miles, IPC does not apply, and since there is no such domestic legislation to deal with the piracy activities, no such law is applicable as far as the jurisdiction of India is concerned. And this is what the bill is trying to change. Now again, if we try to measure from the coastline up to distance of 200 nautical mile, we have the zone that is called as exclusive economic zone. Exclusive economic zone is economically important for all the countries because all the resources that is present in this zone, whether it is the living resources or the mineral resources, this particular country has a sole right and sole ownership of these resources. And the part of sea that is lying beyond EEZ, or we can say the part of sea that is lying beyond the 200 nautical mile demarcation line from the coastline, that is categorized as high seas, and it is this territory of the sea where the current Anti Maritime Piracy Bill will be applicable, which will also enforce the UNCLOS laws in that regard. So what is UNCLOS 1982? So as discussed before, UNCLOS stands for United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, that was signed in year 1982. So basically it is nothing but a set of rules that governs the ocean and the use of the resources on the ocean. Now this is a very comprehensive kind of law because it governs almost all the aspect of ocean. For example, it governs the delimitation, that means the demarcation of ocean, the seas into various zones, various areas. Apart from that, it also discusses or governs the control of environmental pollution. Then it also governs the maritime scientific research, marine scientific research. Not only that, it also has economic ramifications because UNCLOS also applies on economic and commercial activities, transfer of technologies, and the settlement of ocean related dispute which can be between various parties. For example, recently there was a dispute between China and Philippines regarding the demarcation of exclusive economic zone. Then the matter as per UNCLOS was referred to Permanent Court of Arbitration that is situated in The Hague, Netherlands. Under UNCLOS, a separate body has been commissioned that mainly controls mainly governs the right of use of minerals in the high seas areas and the different maritime zones of the ocean. That body is called as ISA, that is International Seabed Authority, which headquarters is located in Jamaica, and in Jamaica the capital of Jamaica is Kingston, and it is a Caribbean country, so that is the ISA headquarters, and this body is the main responsible for granting mineral rights for exploration in different parts of the ocean. UNCLOS also was signed in 1982 in the place called as Montego Bay, as you can see clearly from this image here. Montego Bay, that is part of Jamaica and is part of Caribbean Sea in the North Atlantic Ocean. So what does basically UNCLOS says on piracy or about piracy? So first of all, UNCLOS clearly states that any member states are allowed to seize a pirate ship or aircraft or any vessel that has been captured by the pirates. Not only that, after capturing these or seizing this ship, the member state also have been granted the right that they can arrest the persons involved and seize the property that they can find on board. However, there has been one limitation, that the seizure that is being done by the member states must be carried out either by warships or military aircraft, or have clear markers established that they are government service. That means a country cannot use private contractors or any kind of private entity for seizing and arresting the people who are allegedly involved in piracy activities. So it must be a government vessel. Not only that, UNCLOS also clearly mentions that after arresting and seizing of this vessel, now how prosecution will happen. So it says that the judiciary of the state which has seized the vessel or arrested the pirates, they have full right to carry out the seizure and arrests, and they are also allowed to decide penalties and how to deal with the seized property. That means once India is able to pass this anti-piracy maritime law, then the Indian courts, high courts, supreme courts, even this local courts, they will be having this power to decide penalties and how to deal with the seized property from the pirates. So why there is a urgent need for the anti-piracy regulations, and why India is right now focusing on passing of this bill? So for that we have to understand slightly the geography of the surrounding regions. As we can see, this is the Arabian Sea. So you understand that if you go to east of Arabian Sea, here we have the Indian coastline, and here we have very important transportation network or maritime transportation network of the world that is passing through Gulf of Aden. Gulf of Aden is separating Somalia of Africa to Yemen of Arabia. Then from Gulf of Aden we have a strait, Bab al-Mandab Strait, and this Bab al-Mandab Strait connects Red Sea with the Arabian Sea. And again, if you go more to our north via the Suez Canal, from this Red Sea you can enter into Mediterranean Sea. So almost all the shipping that is happening from Europe to the Asia, Southeast Asia and part of Eastern Africa, most of the ships move through this particular network, and that is why this region has become one of the most affected piracy affected areas. However, in recent times, due to large number of countries who are stationing their navy, stationing their coast guards here, now what we are seeing that the piracy operation, rather than being concentrated around this Gulf of region, is gradually shifting more and more toward the east and south. And due to this, now India's proximity to the piracy related activities will significantly increase, because India's west coast is in the Arabian Sea, open to the Arabian Sea region. And it is in this context that there is an absence of, as we discussed before, there is an absence of dedicated domestic legislation on piracy. Our current law, the IPC section, can only handle piracy activities only up to 12 nautical mile from the India's coast. And it is in this context there is an urgent need that anti-piracy laws for the high seas regions must be passed, so that in case any person or group of person are involved in piracy related activities, Indian Navy or Coast Guard can apprehend them and the judiciary of India can prosecute them. So what is the punishment for offences as per this bill? So for every act of piracy that is involved, the bill says that person involved can be imprisoned for life or even death in case the act of piracy have caused the death or has caused an attempt to cause the death of another person. At the same time, if someone is assisting or indirectly participating in the acts of piracy, in that case the person can get 14 years of imprisonment and a fine. Now this is something that we have to understand here, the final line, because here we are looking at the participating in the acts of piracy and here we have the acts of piracy, and for both these acts the punishment is different. For one it is life sentence, for other it is the 14 years, and this is what is the cause of concern, because many experts believe that how can the overlap of 14-year term and the life term will be determined. The reason is very simple, that if someone is committing piracy, that means he also is involved in the second part of this bill, that is participating in piracy. How can a person be involved in act of piracy without participating in the act of piracy? So that is a kind of we can say a lacuna in the bill in one sense. So how the overlapping of this will be determined by the courts, that is one thing. Second is, there has been a clear mention of death penalty in the first provision of the bill, and that is also an issue of concern, because according to the Supreme Court of India, it has clearly said that the death sentence in India can only be given in the rarest of the rare cases. So is the piracy or piracy related death can be considered as the rarest of rare case? That is something that judiciary will have also to take a fresh stand. And as per the top court, that is the Supreme Court of India, the death penalty clearly violates Article 14 and 21 of the Constitutions. So how can this bill be passed in its original form if the death sentence is mentioned there? So these are some of the important final details that I think in the bill is tabled in the Parliament will have to be discussed upon by the parliamentarians, and then we'll see how the final draft of bill look like and what is the stand of judiciary on this whole aspect. So that is all about this particular issue. I hope you understood about the final details of anti-piracy bill and why it is needed. That is all for today. Thank you very much.